Yeah, so we got the diagnosis a couple of years ago now, and went through a typical kind of grieving process of processing it, the denial, the pain, the depression, the anger, ultimately transitioning that into, feeling like we needed to do something and taking action. I can't even fathom what's going to come to fruition in the next
Yeah.
5, 10, 20 years with how fast AI is evolving and all these technologies are becoming very personalized and integratable, and the Neuralink stuff and I'll start by saying I was never a triathlete before taking on this realm. I purely took it on as a symbolic event and a symbolic thing to do for two reasons. A, we're quite literally racing against time. We're racing against my son losing his vision. So doing a racing event was very, analogous to that, and, taking on that challenge and wanting to use it as a way to raise awareness and support. But it was also very analogous in terms of wanting to be a role model for my son of taking on challenges, how to do hard things, how to overcome adversity and challenges so that when he's in his hard moments and he's going through things, whether it's a vision loss or something else in life that could be unrelated even, I can at least have really a strong model to pull from and be like, look, this is how I did it. This is how I got through those tough moments.
Welcome to the Too Dad to Quit podcast.
The podcast where we highlight stories of dads on the other side of divorce.
To inspire and give strength to dads going through it.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Yoel.
Welcome back to the Too Dad to Quit podcast. You can find us on twodadtoquit.com, Too Dad to Quit, on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. And we are always looking to share your story. So please reach out to us. Every story we believe has something to share and help others. Today, we are sitting down with Steve Johnston. Steve Johnston is a doctor, an MBA. He is a father, a radiologist, a nonprofit founder, and Ironman athlete. When he found out his 9-year-old son, Luke, was going blind as a result of a rare disease, he founded a Race Against Blindness to fund sight-saving research for his son and thousands of others like him. Though Steve is relatively new to the nonprofit world, he's a man on a mission to raise $1 million for a clinical trial and taking on challenges like Ironman to raise money and be an example for his son. So far, they've raised over 6 figures, been featured on Good Morning America and the Dan Karate, If I'm Being Honest podcast, and had TV spots in multiple major markets. Steve lives outside of Phoenix and spends his spare time training for his next Ironman and traveling with his family to create lifelong sighted memories for Luke. So Steve, thank you for coming on. I could not think of a more poignant and crucial guest. As I was telling you earlier, I work for a company that deals with blindness and disabilities all the time. And, as a company, the goal is to make the web as accessible for as many people as possible. And, it seems like you're a man, you've gone, I guess, to radiology school, you got your MBA, you're definitely driven. And this is one of those things where you saw that there was a need and you just took that and took the action and just ran with it, literally and figuratively. Where does that drive come from? Were you always driven as a kid, as growing up, or was it something in your family? Where does that drive to just keep doing come from?
So I think that my drive kind of comes in several flavors. So obviously to get to where I, was with, making it through, med school and residency and all the kind of rigors of that process to become a physician, I certainly had to have drive and motivation. But I would say that during that time, I was still somebody who was a little bit just kind of going through the motions, just doing the things that you feel like maybe you're supposed to do to have a good career and all these kind of things, and lacking maybe that deep passion and purpose to have that mission behind you of what you're doing. And I always felt that was lacking, and I never really knew what to do about it or where to find it. And I guess sometimes things happen for a reason, and that I was meant to go to med school and get all those kind of credentials and background and training so that I could be in a position to do what I'm doing today, which is advocating for my son, his condition, and all the children like him who have retinitis pigmentosa and are losing their vision, which now I've really found that mission and that passion. And ever since then, that drive has been unrelenting, and nothing can stop me at this point.
Wow. And how many years ago did you find out this diagnosis?
Yeah, so we got the diagnosis a couple of years ago now, and went through a typical kind of grieving process of processing it, the denial, the pain, the depression, the anger, ultimately transitioning that into, feeling like we needed to do something and taking action to try to help him and support a cure. So we've known for a couple of years, but it's really been the last 14 months or so that we started the nonprofit to be doing what we're doing for his condition.
And from what I read, it takes the biggest toll in the teenage years. Is that what I read?
Yeah. So the disease he has, retinitis pigmentosa, is really considered a group of conditions that are all caused by different underlying genetic diagnoses and underlying genetic causes. So every version of RP has a very variable presentation in terms of how early it presents, how severe it presents, and how quickly people lose their eyesight. My son's specific version, which is caused by Bardet-Biedl syndrome, which is an ultra rare condition. They very typically get diagnosed kind of in the early to mid childhood, years, 5 to 10 years old. And then they can fairly quickly lose their vision until they're legally blind in their mid to late teen years. So it can be fairly rapidly progressive. And that's kind of the expectation that we have in terms of his prognosis right now, which really lit the fire for us in terms of both trying to make the most of the time that we have right now, where he has some preserved vision, and also the lighting the fire for, how much time we may have to save his vision, find a cure, and do all those kind of things. So it's really one of those diagnoses that certainly upends your entire life in a lot of ways.
Sure. And how is he dealing with all of this?
He keeps processing it differently as he ages. So, kids only know what they know, right? So like his vision to him is just his vision, and that's all he knows. Yeah. So
Right.
He doesn't know, and he doesn't know any differently. And prior to getting the diagnosis, he didn't really have any exposure to, people with vision disabilities. He didn't know anybody who was blind, anything like that. So he really didn't have a frame of reference to compare it to. So, that very first time that we told him, like, this is what's happening, you could lose your vision, and this is what it could be like. I think it was just kind of one of those things. He was like, okay, he's just kind of like, what do you, how do you process that? How do you take that in as a, 8 or 9 year old kid? And it wasn't until more time went by that, he had more time to process it, probably learn more about what vision loss is, get exposed more to everything, that he's had those moments where you can really see he's struggling with it, or it's emotionally affecting him. But in general, I'd say he's very strong and just one of these kids that just keeps going and doesn't seem to let that hold him back in any real way, shape, or form. And I'm just so proud of who he is as a kid, and the toughness and resilience that he seems to show on something like that, to not let it hold him back.
Yeah, there's a few things that come to mind, like that Ben Affleck movie where he's the blind superhero.
Mm-hmm.
And how he uses like the rain and things like that to navigate, like there's no, like, did he, in his curiosity, did he go down that route, like, oh, let me see what it's like and take advantage now, kind of, to show him what it's like, or how you could, like, like with kids with ADHD, so you're like, oh, look, Mark Cuban, oh, look, this guy, oh, that guy, so like kind of, it's not so bad. And then the other thing is, there's a new show that just started. There's like 3 episodes or 4 episodes in. I'll send it to you. It's about a woman cop who loses her vision. And and I don't know if it's a real thing or not, but she basically connects with a service where there's a sighted person that uses the camera on the phone and an earpiece and tells this cop, what she is seeing. And they work together so nobody knows she's blind.
Oh, wow.
And it's a brand new show. They're like 3 episodes in. I'll send it to you after. But it's the concept is really cool. And the person that's being the sighted one, she actually has agoraphobia. So
Mm.
she's afraid to leave her house. And
Yep.
this blind person is the one that's helping her actually get out.
Yeah.
So those are two things that come to the top off the top of my head of, removing the stigma and, taking it as not a disability, but more of it just changes the way you look at things.
That's it. Yeah, no, I think that's a really important thing to keep in mind, and certainly something we've tried to keep at the forefront of everything we do with our son, Luke, is that, this isn't like who you are. This is just something you have. We all have things, whether we have diabetes or, some autoimmune disease, or, you've suffered a physical trauma and you're missing a limb, or you have hearing loss, vision loss, other things like that. There's whole ranges of medical conditions, if that's what you want to call them, that affect us in different ways, and everybody's got their different challenges related to those diagnoses, and some are maybe more severe than others, but ultimately it doesn't have to define you. It doesn't have to be who you are, and it's just something you have and that you overcome, and that and every one of us has things like that we have to overcome. So I think just trying to keep that at the forefront for him of, this isn't who you are, this is just something you have.
Yeah, and I think there was a Super Bowl ad from Google this game that they created. Well, it's two things. One, they created software in the camera that'll talk and say selfie mode, and it'll say when the thing is in the frame or not in the frame.
Making this film allows me to translate the blind experience and put viewers into the point of view of a blind person. The story is about a blind man and his girlfriend, and we follow them on their journey together and growing closer. This blind man is able to capture all of these significant moments throughout their relationship with this guided frame AI feature.
Move your phone down. One face in frame. Hold for photo.
But the cool part about the ad is it's actually directed by a blind director.
Sight and vision are two different things. We use our sight to map our physical surroundings. Our vision is our imagination. I'm not just a blind film director. I'm a filmmaker who happens to be blind.
No way. Yeah.
And I'll send you that also. Again,
Cool.
Being in the industry and in that, so we see these videos internally of, hey, I'm watching this, check this out. So this is really something, that hits me. I know exactly how the technology is progressing, and the world is becoming more inclusive, as opposed to, I'm sure, 30 years ago, here's a stick and that's it.
Yeah. No, the assistive technology space and realm is just unbelievable. The things that are out there right now that can, make a difference in terms of how anybody with a disability interacts with the world is just unbelievable. And I can't, I'm so thankful for that part of technology. There's so many things about technology that you can, say negative things about or whatever in terms of how it affects our world. But man, that's just one of them that's just so powerful and life-changing in terms of the people who can benefit from that. And even simple things, just like literally like text to voice, reading text off a screen so that we can hear it instead of having to see it and read it. Like that's a very simple thing that we take for granted is just so wildly impactful for people. So I can't even fathom what's going to come to fruition in the next 5, 10, 20 years with how fast AI is evolving, and all these technologies are becoming very personalized and integratable, and the Neuralink stuff that Elon Musk is doing. It's just some wild stuff coming that could really change what happens for anybody with any sort of hearing, visual, or other impairment.
Yeah, we actually, one of our early ad campaigns for the company, we hired the voice of Siri. Mm-hmm. And when we launched the ads, we realized that person wasn't a person, but to the blind community, so many of them had Apple devices because of the built-in assistive technology that it was like their helper. Yeah. And we didn't realize, we thought it was cool to do it. But then once it launched and people heard it and it was like a totally different experience. Like she was being thanked all over and she didn't realize that she was expecting, like it was a fluke that she even got the job. She was just doing like a simple like voiceover thing and she didn't know what it was for. And
Yeah.
then now she goes around speaking about the impact of her voice,
Yeah.
which is
That's wild.
really, really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. So it's certainly something like that. Yeah. I mean, Siri is just like integrated into so many parts of our lives. I can't imagine what that's like for that person who actually is Siri.
Yeah. Yeah. She's pretty cool.
Nice.
So so let's back up. So you went to med school, you did all that, you had a kid. Do you have any other children?
Yeah, so we have two kids, 10 and 7. So my son is now 10, and then we have a 7, soon to be 8-year-old daughter. And she's unaffected. She doesn't have any visual impairments or anything. And yeah, those are the two kids.
Nice. And you guys live close to each other? You
Yeah, so mom and I are divorced. We've been divorced for about 5 years, and we always had a good co-parenting relationship before all this happened, but we were obviously divorced when the diagnosis came. And so that was something we processed as divorced parents, and had to, really evaluate our priorities in terms of, how we were spending our personal time, our co-parenting time, what the kids needed, both, Luke having the diagnosis and his sister, having a brother who's going through something big, and how to make sure they both really had what they needed. So that certainly, brought up a lot of discussions for us in terms of, our, what we wanted our lives to look like. And ultimately, a lot of changes came from that. And we have much more of a meshed schedule in life now that, we both are very integrated into the kids' lives and routines. And we did stuff like last summer where we basically all went on a big trip together, and there was a whole bunch of people involved, whether, it was, grandparents all came, her friend came, both parents, obviously, the kids, everybody was there. It's just this big, thing of people all coming together for one singular cause, which is to give my son this experience to see the world and travel and do as much as we can. And nobody wanted to miss it, and nobody wanted to be a part of it. And it was really pretty to see that kind of come together of, everybody just putting aside completely everything else and doing that. So yeah, so it's obviously a complicated thing going through something like this, but we've certainly made the best of it and really have, turned it into as much of a positive for all of us as we can.
and are you both involved also in the cause and the fundraising and all the all that goes into that? Because starting an organization and if the serious goal is yours, I'm sure all hands on deck is helpful. Is it?
Yeah, it is. And so yeah, we are considered co-founders together, mom and I. We both started the nonprofit together. We each have kind of different roles and things that we do with it within our skill sets and our level of, interest in what we take on and what we do. But we both do it together, and we're kind of equally committed to, the ultimate end goal, which is being successful in trying to fund a clinical trial for this condition that my son has. So yeah, we do this thing together entirely. It's amazing to see.
Wow. And so there's a clinical trial ready to go. It just needs funding, or it's the research needs to be done.
Yeah, so that's the good and the bad news of it, depending on which side you want to look at it. The huge opportunity is that we have this therapy that is based off of another therapy, which was FDA approved for a similar cause of childhood blindness. That same technology was kind of repurposed and repackaged for my son's genetic condition. So basically, they swapped out the missing genes and restructured the treatment so that it could be done for my son's condition. And they went through the animal models, the animal testing, got it ready to go. And so it's really far along in terms of kind of that research pathway, which can take years and decades to put together. So it was really far along. And so that's a really great opportunity for us in that it's ready to go. The flip side is, though, that it's a rare disease, and that presents a lot of challenges in fundraising. And we basically are just awaiting getting the funds before this thing is ready to become a human clinical trial, which is the stage it's at in terms of its research life cycle. We're just waiting for the money to get, to have enough to turn it into a real human clinical trial, which is frustrating, knowing like there's this thing that could save my son's eyesight and thousands of other kids like him. The money is the one thing that is holding us back, which, it gets equally more frustrating when you start to look at, these big, huge dollars that get spent on anything and everything in the world. And you're like, well, we only need like, a couple million bucks. Come on, we could save eyesight. We could do this beautiful thing. And like, we could really advance vision saving research. And, it's just so frustrating knowing that it's possible, but the money is just simply not there.
Wow. And I know a little bit about that world as well. And I'm assuming there's like grants and organizations and things like that, but it's a whole process. So raising this money is really the shortest route from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly what needs to happen if we want to support a cure. We certainly don't have any other treatment options that are kind of in the pipeline. When we found out that he has the diagnosis, we were essentially told he was going to go blind and there was nothing we could do about it. And it wasn't until we really got out there and started fighting to find researchers or anybody working on this that we came across this company in the UK who had already been putting in the time and effort on creating this therapy. So yeah, that's really the only option right now that exists. And so that's been our primary fundraising cause. We certainly have some long-term goals with the nonprofit to use this, once we get this funded, once we get this clinical trial going, to use this as a, something to keep the ball rolling on vision saving therapy, because every time you do one of these, it becomes easier and easier to get it going. The FDA approvals become easier. The funding becomes easier for something that's more of like a known model. But something like this that's only been done once before, like there's more FDA roadblocks and red flags, and the funding is much more difficult because venture capitalists and donors and people like that haven't heard of anything like this, and so there's just so many more hurdles that you have to overcome. But hopefully with each therapy that gets approved and shows to work and all that kind of stuff, it'll just snowball on itself and really get that ball going forward in terms of more and more conditions can be treated, more and more people can have their vision saved and things like that. So we really want to accomplish that long term, but our first step is to get this therapy funded and get this clinical trial going.
Wow. Part of me wants to focus on your son and how he's dealing with it, and part of me doesn't. I want to focus more on you. I know. I'm curious how his friends and school and the people around him of his peers dealt with this news.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'd say in general, it's all been dealt with in just as positive a way as imaginable. Just the level of support and concern and empathy has been very much overwhelming at times, where you're just like, you can't process, all these people who are willing to help and willing to make a difference. The most glaring example of that was this summer when we started to do a lot of our big fundraising efforts, and his friends at school, kind of near the end of school time, were like, well, we want to help, we want to do something. And so they decided to do a lemonade stand, which is, just super sweet in and of itself. Just kids wanted to do a lemonade stand. And so the parents kind of supported these kids and like, okay, yeah, we'll do a lemonade stand. And we, as a nonprofit, kind of reached out to the local news organizations and let them know, like, hey, this is what's going on if you guys want to cover it, and a couple of news stations took an interest in it, and they did some coverage before and during and after it. And ultimately we got $10,000 raised from a lemonade stand, which is incredible. Amazing. And it's just so moving. It just shows how anybody with a will and a desire to help can really make a real meaningful impact. And it was so incredible to see. But so to answer your question, like of, friends and people like that, just wanting to be supportive and being concerned and wanting to help, it was just this amazing thing to see.
That's great. And, he's not the only one with this condition. How is building a network with other families? Are they also running? How does someone want to get involved? A, if they have this same situation, and B, if they don't, but they just want to help.
Yeah, so it's a small network of people who have this condition. So we've certainly connected with a number of them through being, publicly visible on social media and things like that, and kind of putting ourselves out there and telling the story. We've certainly connected with other families who are out there and have done it. But there's, just several thousand people really who have this condition. So it's a really small number in terms of, when you're looking at like the US as a whole, and finding people who have this condition. In terms of ways, people can help and get involved. I always say there's really no shortage of options, whether it's just literally being kind of an advocate and, resharing some information about us, telling your friends, putting on your social media, that kind of stuff makes a wildly huge impact in terms of, helping kind of spread the word. And you never know who's going to see something like that, whether it's going to be somebody who works for some big biotech company who's moved by it and they can, make a donation, or, an investment that might make a difference, or whether someone's friend who's a congressman sees it and wants to do something, you never know who's going to see something.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of been our biggest motto, is that, just the awareness part is so hugely impactful. And then if anybody has means and abilities to help in other ways, whether it's, lemonade stands and bake sales, to running bigger events, or wanting to get involved at a high level, there's no shortage of opportunities to, help if that's something you want to do. And it's really always just a matter of what you want to do, what you're motivated by, what kind of gets you going, and then you can always take it and run with it. There's no shortage.
And how many races? I know the triathlons are like the Ironmans are the big ones. Are you only doing Ironmans? Are you doing smaller runs as well?
Yeah, so I did my first Ironman race last May for and I'll start by saying I was never a triathlete before taking on this realm. I purely took it on as a symbolic event and a symbolic thing to do for two reasons. A, we're quite literally racing against time. We're racing against my son losing his vision. So doing a racing event was very, analogous to that, and, taking on that challenge and wanting to use it as a way to raise awareness and support. But it was also very analogous in terms of wanting to be a role model for my son, of taking on challenges, how to do hard things, how to overcome adversity and challenges, so that when he's in his hard moments and he's going through things, whether it's with vision loss or something else in life, that could be unrelated even, I can at least have really a strong model to pull from and be like, look, this is how I did it. This is how I got through those tough moments. And I specifically chose something like, the Ironman racing, because I'm not good at it and I don't even like it. If I had just chose something that I enjoy, like playing basketball or something, that wouldn't be a challenge, and that wouldn't be overcoming adversity and hardship, right? Even if I was going to try to make it to the NBA or something, which would be totally outlandish. But the concept being the same, which is I would be doing something that's fun and that I enjoy. Doing something that I don't enjoy and that's extremely hard for me and not natural for me and just truly sucks. Like, there's no way around it. Like that running those amount of miles and riding and swimming and doing all those things is just hard, and it can suck. So it's a great opportunity to be able to have those mental toughness learning points and, showing him how to get through it. And I want him to see me doing those things while he's young, because what kids see is what they become. And like,
Right.
he sees me doing hard things, he will then be able to translate that for himself. And then, like I said, the teaching moments for me, so I can learn how to do it. And then when he's in a tough moment, like, hey buddy, this is how I did it. This is how you can do it. I know you can get through this. So I think that those are just the really important things about the racing component of what we're doing.
Is he also racing?
No, not really yet.
No, he's not, not at all.
Yeah, no, we've done some running clubs and some kind of smaller events with him and try to, give him those opportunities. My daughter is the one who really takes to it. So Luke's mom is a very accomplished athlete. She's done 4 Ironmans now, and she's like very, very good at it. And our daughter is certainly taking in her footsteps in terms of wanting to be out there racing and being like mom and just eating it up. Like the last Ironman race, I mean, during the run portion of the race, my daughter was out there like literally running on the course with her and keeping up with her. And I mean, and
Wow.
she's this little like,
Yeah.
tiny, 7-year-old girl, and she's just out there sprinting and going after it. It was wild to see, but yeah.
Very interesting. Like I have a couple of friends that got started in Ironman, and like slowly and surely each kid is like joining the flock of little runners and bikers
Yep.
and swimmers. Do you think has he I don't know. I feel like I don't know, maybe I don't know. Why do you think he's not jumping along, I'm with you, you're doing it, I'm gonna do it with you? Is it
I don't know.
he's dealing with so much, or you think it's that he's got his own things?
Yeah, it's a great question. What we gravitate to as people in terms of our interests and motivations and all that kind of stuff is certainly one of those things that's a great question. Like I certainly wouldn't have been out there running if like it wasn't for wanting to take on this symbolic thing. Like I never had that urge to do it until then. And we've certainly tried to do our best in giving them opportunities that they're excited about. So one of the things that he does that's a physical event for him is karate. He loves karate.
Yeah.
He's been doing it for like 4 or 5 years now in a row, and he's progressed multiple belt levels, and he's just very consistent with it and loves it. And that has a lot of great like lessons for him in terms of like discipline and responsibility and overcoming challenges. So he does take on other physical challenges and things. He just, for some whatever reason, the running and biking and stuff just hasn't been his thing. So we're not gonna force anything like that on him or push something like that he just doesn't have that strong desire for right now. But he's certainly an active kid, and we believe in being active and fit and healthy. So he definitely takes on some of that stuff, and and it's been great to watch.
So your first Ironman was in May. How did you do?
Awful. I did straight up awful. I would say the first rule of Ironman is that it's you versus you. Like you really are out there racing against yourself and competing against what's capable for you and what your personal best is. But I'm pretty sure I think I was like bottom 3 in my age group or something, or last in my age group and bottom 3 overall. It was awful. It was totally pathetic. But I didn't care. I wasn't even focused on that. I wasn't thinking about it. I was just so excited to cross the finish line and get across. And man, it was an emotional experience. I mean, there was tears afterwards, and I picked up my son and was explaining to him about what I just done, and teaching him about it. And he was even right there on the last couple laps where I was on the run and I was struggling, and I saw him, and it really gave me that kind of push of energy I needed to get across the finish line. But it was, to the outside world looking in, like why this like 40-year-old guy is like struggling so bad, they were probably really confused. But man, I'm just so bad at that stuff, but I did it anyways, so I didn't care.
Nah, kudos to you. Running's one of those things I just never got into, and I'm a competitive guy, but competing against myself has never been a thing.
Yeah.
It's that mindset is I don't know. Either it's my confidence doesn't like I am what I am. I don't need to prove it to myself, kind of a thing.
Yep.
But if you put some guy against me and he says he's going to do better than me, I will get out there and give 130%. But I don't have that competing. And I used to race bikes, but again, it's against people, so it's a different mindset. I've never gotten into. To me, it sounds silly, but to me, running is like it's like a waste of time. I want to be doing something or racing to something. Like the goal is too far, or the goal is I don't know, just not. I just can't picture that goal unless I can be number 1, which is not going to happen. Yeah. So it's not like I'm not going to try because I can't be number 1. Like people, all those, thousands of people that do New York City Marathon, they know they're not going to be number 1, but they're competing against either themselves or a cause or whatever it is. And it's never been like a drive for me. although the Tough Mudders or like those kind of things with obstacle courses, that seems a little more exciting to me than just, hey, I'm just going to run and just keep running until I stop. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's never.
I get it.
So kudos to you that you've been able to shift your mind to be able to do that. It's impressive to me.
Yeah, no, I mean, it goes back to all your whys, right? Like, what's your purpose? What's your mission? Why are you doing what you're doing? If I didn't have that, the reason I was racing, for my son, the nonprofit, all those kind of things, like the desire for me to do that was never there before that. And it certainly wouldn't have been there without that. So, it does take, for a lot of people, having that kind of, that mission and that purpose behind it, that's something that they're trying to achieve or accomplish or prove to themselves. I think that's a very important storyline that goes along with a lot of these tough physical undertakings that people will do. And then there's just the subset of people who just truly love it and they enjoy it and that's their jam. And that's a different subset of people who just literally love going out in there and doing what they're doing. And that's going to be different for everybody. For, me, like I always loved playing basketball. I loved just getting out there. I could shoot hoops for hours and I wouldn't get bored. Right. But there's plenty of people who you give them a basketball, they look at it and go like, what am I supposed to do with this thing? This is dumb. And that's one of those like, awesome individuality things about makes us all special, is like why I love just shooting this round thing through a little hole and I could do it for hours. And then other people look at it and go, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. That's, I think, just one of the cool things about what makes us who we are.
Yeah. So talking about who you are, like the way you've reacted to this diagnosis and how you guys as a family have done this, like was there like a month of shock, or was there somebody in the family that was just like, don't worry, we got this, we're going to figure it out? Like how, just, I know how some people in my family react when they find out there's a broken foot.
Mm-hmm.
So like there's some people in the family that are like, forget it, I'm never riding a bike again. I don't know what to do. I can't walk. My foot's got to be up on this couch for 7 years until I grow another one. So how did your family, deal with it and all the different people in it? Were your parents a source of, don't worry, we're here for you? Or was it like, you and your son's mom just like, we got to deal with it. We're going to have to rearrange schedules. We got to go to all the meetings, all the doctor's appointments, whatever we did before, it doesn't matter. Let's just start over.
Yeah, there was, a lot of everything you just said, certainly kind of in different levels and doses. Certainly there was the initial kind of shock and, acceptance part where you're just dealing with the emotional side of it, of accepting the diagnosis and is this really happening? Why me? All those kind of things. You get all that range of emotions that you go through when something hard happens. The support network is obviously really important in terms of, how you can process something like this, your immediate family, friends, professional resources you have available with, physicians or counselors, people like that who really know a lot about what it is that you're going through. So that's obviously an important aspect of all of it. And then in terms of, just that drive to go forward, like, yeah, I mean, a lot of that was certainly on us as parents to go, okay, this is what we have in front of us. This is we're going to make a choice how we're going to respond to it, because you could choose two routes essentially, which is one, we're going to let this bring us down and we're going to let this, become the worst thing that's ever happened to us and be this source of negativity and let this affect my son in a negative way. Or we can choose to respond to it in as positive a way as possible, which is we're not going to be victims to it. We're going to take control of the situation and focus on the things that are within our immediate sphere of control that we can affect the outcome on, whether it's taking on challenges to teach him how to overcome hardship, putting him in situations where he can learn those things, just the mindset of like, teaching him about, that, this is just, something you have and it's not who you are. And certainly, ultimately our decision as kind of a family to, do something at a bigger scale, which is try to do awareness and research, which it felt natural to want to go that route because of that training and experience that, I had with, my medical background. Luke's mom is a nurse, so she has a medical background. So us being kind of this group of people who are motivated, have a medical background, and then have this desire, we really felt like it was a way we could help not just my son, but a lot of people. And so we took on that challenge head on and really haven't looked back since.
Wow. And have you seen Luke change at all? His personality, his drive, his outlook on life?
I'd say in general, I've seen just this kind of really mature response from him, and he's still a kid at the end of the day, which is what's so amazing. Like, he hasn't let something like this, change who he is as a kid. He still has fun. He's goofy. He plays. He gets involved in a lot of the things that kids like, with Pokemon cards and all the
Yep.
things. He's still just a kid at the end of the day, and that's what's so special to see. But I've seen him truly embrace challenges and overcoming things that are hard for him. Like just looking at, like, this summer, for example, we were doing a bunch of national park trips, and we were out traveling and doing things. And he hadn't had a ton of experience with hiking and going on hard, excursions and things like that. And so the first few times we did it, he kind of complained. He's like, "Oh my God, this is so far. And like, how much further?" And all those kind of things, the things you expect from kids while you're like, we're going to go on. And then, transition that into a few months into summer after going on a bunch of hikes, and he's up there leading the pack, and he's plowing away, and he's just like, having fun on the trail and exploring and, getting into nature and doing all those things, so, you can just see the growth and the maturity and, him changing and embracing kind of what we were doing. And it was so special to see, but also heartbreaking too, because you're sitting there going, wow, he's really embracing this. He's really loving this way of life, of traveling and hiking and seeing nature. And it's like, how long will he be able to do this? And how long will he be able to see these things? And how long will it be safe for him to be out here on these trails and doing all this stuff? And so it was kind of one of those, like, it's really amazing to watch him mature and grow in this way, but it's also really sad thinking about what the potential reality could be for him.
Right. But that's probably more sad for you and his mother than it is for him.
It is right now, because we know what that future could look like for him. I don't think it really has fully set into him what that truly means, of like what life would be like without vision and without being able to see. It's one of those kind of like ignorance is bliss type things, where like, if you don't know, you don't know. And we, as obviously adults and parents, really understand what that will mean for him and what that will be like. But he doesn't really truly fully appreciate it, just as a kid, and going through it himself. It's just one of those things that's like, how do you process that as a kid and understand that really fully?
Yeah, but it might also be that way always for him, because it's just how it is.
Yep.
Like for you guys, it's different, looking at it, and this is what it is. And what has he taught you, guys, from watching him during this whole experience?
Yeah, I think in some ways, still focusing on the things that matter, like he hasn't let it affect him and bring him down and all those kind of things. And, just being able to still just focus on the things that he cares about, that he enjoys, somehow looking past all those things. I think it's really an important reminder to, despite all the things that may be happening in our lives, to really always refocus, recenter, reground yourself on, your highest priorities, the things that truly matter to you, and living your life towards achieving those things that really are important to you. Because it's so easy to get distracted by all the other noise in the world and focusing on things that don't matter. But he really teaches us and reminds us to focus on the things that do matter.
Yeah, it's for those parents that are having a really hard time co-parenting, it's even the small things, like when the kid needs to go to the urgent care, magically the parents that are fighting so much, one of them drops everything to go and cover so the other one could be watching the kids. It's those constant reminders of, hey, this is what really you're supposed to be doing, this is what's really important. The little things shouldn't be where you're spending your energy. There's a concept that you only have like 100 energy points a day.
Yeah.
And so you need to be very conscious where you spend those 100 energy points. Yeah. Because once you're down to like 30, everything else suffers. So yeah, it's really important to focus where those are. Now, for co-parenting, were you guys always good co-parents, or was it like taken up a notch after this?
No, I mean, we were always good co-parents. Certainly things did go up a notch, once you get a diagnosis like this and have to go through something like this. But we, obviously every divorce is different. Reasons why people get divorced are going to be wildly different. So I wouldn't say that, it's applicable to everybody, to have this good co-parenting dynamic where we really see eye to eye on what's best for the kids and trying to put them at the forefront of things and trying to work together as a team to make sure that we're both supporting the kids as best we can, in spite of the co-parenting. So that was always kind of a foundational thing for us, which I'm fortunate that, we did. And, it's not easy to do, right? Like, there's definitely times you could sit there and say, oh, well, I'm not gonna do this. I'm gonna let this other kind of petty peripheral thing like be a reason why I'm not gonna do this. Like it takes a conscious effort sometimes to sit there and go, no, it doesn't matter. What matters is like my son and my daughter getting what they need and putting them first. And when you look at the grand scheme of life, there's this short window where your kids are young and that they're a part of your life and that you're parenting them and making an impact on them. And that, it feels like it's a long time, obviously, like 18 years is obviously a really long time, but in the grand scheme of things, it's a pretty small amount of time. So when you start to really try to keep that framed in your mind that like, this is important and I've got to do this, it helps you make those better decisions with the kids in mind. And then, as you mentioned, things really ramped up and changed once we got my son's diagnosis, that we really, neither one of us wanted to be missing big events and traveling and experiences. And like, how do we make all that work so we can both be a part of as much of his life as we can and all move forward in a healthy, positive way.
Yeah, it's like the saying, kids are adults more than their kids, right? So, it may be crazy at times, but you want to be there for the kids' time, because after that, they're just adults. Not just adults, but they're just adults. They can do what they want. They can go where they want. That time is a lot harder to believe that you're going to be a part of it, I guess is the best way to put it. Unless you spend the time when they're kids, and it's really important to spend that time. So speaking of kids, and this is the Too Dad to Quit podcast, we like all of our guests to share a Too Dad to Quit moment, a moment where you've been the proudest as a dad, and you just think of that moment and you're like, man, I am the dad. There's this, anytime it is one of those bad moments, you think of this moment and you're like, all right, it was worth it.
I mean, in terms of something I did or something my son did?
It's up to you.
Okay. So I think every time I see my son go up a belt level in his karate, that those are those super proud dad moments because of what it meant for him to get to that level, which is discipline, determination, commitment, and him not being willing to quit. Because there are definitely days when you're going through that, that journey of martial arts, like this sucks, I'm not getting any better, I'm not getting there. But stacking those wins over days, weeks, and months, putting in that consistent effort and growing, and then seeing the fruits of that labor, it's one of those skills that when I see it, I know I'm like, he's going to be successful in life no matter what gets thrown at him. he's got what it takes to be a good human being down the road. And he's going to do really well. So every time you see them graduate that belt level, you're just like, man, I am one lucky dad, and I'm so proud of that kid right now.
Nice. And then one last thing we like to leave with our listeners is some advice for, a dad who's thinking about getting divorced, going through divorce. Just something, maybe some advice that you wish you would have had during that process, that you can give to any of our listeners. We also have 20% of our listeners are female, so it's really a wide audience, and they're based on the data from our listeners and the data and the feedback. We have a lot of married listeners as well that just listening to understand it. Sometimes it's good for them to see the other side, to just make those good decisions and figure out what they're going to do with their lives.
Yeah. So, okay, lots of stuff there to unpack. But first off, for the people who are still married and maybe going through some hard times, is you can't start talking soon enough. You can't start trying to work through your problems soon enough. Like, if you're wondering whether you should be getting help or doing anything like that, then the answer is unastoundingly yes. So you get that help, talk to a counselor, a marriage therapist, anything like that. Those conversations are absolutely invaluable. It takes time to have those conversations work. It takes time to make changes, both in yourself and in your relationship. So the sooner you start that process, the better chance you have of saving that marriage. Or if you're already on your way out of it, that's your chance to start building a healthy co-parenting foundation where you can be the best dad and best co-parent and best role model you can for him in that new situation that you're going to be in. But get help. It's okay to ask for help. It's not like some sign of weakness. I know men we have this desire to not want to ask for help, and that it makes us feel weak, but that's the exact opposite. So it's okay to get that help, and I would strongly encourage it.
Amazing. And if any of our listeners want to support your cause and help Luke's story and find a cure, where can we find you? How can they help you?
Yeah, so we're in all the usual places. We have a website, araceagainstblindness.org. If you search for A Race Against Blindness on any of the social media channels, you'll find us on Instagram and Facebook and all that kind of stuff. And we share a lot of stuff about our nonprofit, our fundraisers, what we're doing. I individually have my own page that I share some more personal life stuff and dad life and all that kind of stuff. And I'm Dad vs. Blindness on Instagram. And so I share a lot of my dad stuff there. Sometimes I'm more active than others, just with keeping up with social media and life and all that kind of stuff. But I'd love to connect with anybody there. And there are a million causes in the world that you could support. There's certainly no shortage of important things out there, but if this resonates in any way, we certainly appreciate any support at all, whether it's literally just a little like and a share. Those things make a huge difference. So thank you for your support, and we appreciate you all.
Awesome. Thank you for coming on, Steve. And for all of our listeners, this has been Too Dad to Quit podcast. And don't forget to reach out, like, share, and we want to hear your story and share your story. And we'll see you next week. This podcast provides a platform for our guests to express their own personal views and opinions. Some or all of these views and opinions may not be shared by Ben and or Yoel. Thank you for listening to the Too Dad to Quit podcast. Available at toodadtoquit.com. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.